Before we get to this week's message, if these online resources have been meaningful to you, please consider going to newchurchtx.com/give and show your support by helping make this ministry possible. Thank you.
Welcome to the New Church Podcast.
There's a lot of great songs about grudges. I've always liked that Alanis Morissette song, You Ought to Know, when she says, every time I scratch my nails down someone else's back, I hope you feel it. That's so cold. Taylor Swift, she says, you should keep in mind there's nothing I do better than revenge. She's made a career out of breakup songs. Bad Blood, Picture to Burn, all her other songs. Remember that old Nancy Sinatra song? These boots are made for walking. One of these days, these boots are going to walk all over you. That's a grudge. Carly Simon, she dated the actor Warren Beatty, and then she wrote the song, You're so vain, you probably think this song's about you. Don't you? Don't you? Even Adele, Rolling in the Deep, that's a payback song. But movies are where grudges are really close to my heart. Because a bunch of my favorite movies are basically just revenge fantasies. Like Gran Torino, The Unforgiven, True Grit, RoboCop, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, Gladiator, Memento, Payback, Taken, Man on Fire, Death Wish, Charles Bronson, and the new Death Wish with Bruce Willis, Sweet Revenge. Remember Sean Connery in The Untouchables? He had this great line. He said, you put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of his in the morgue. See, that's what we call retaliation. The original Mad Max Road Warrior, Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, even my favorite movie, The Princess Bride. It's based as much on revenge as it is on true love. Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You kill my father. Prepare to die. We love a grudge. We love to think about getting even. We're pretty sure what he actually meant was do unto others before they do unto you. And then we come to Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 38, and it kind of Jesus jukes everything. Matthew chapter 5, starting at verse 38. You have heard it said that the punishment must match the injury. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. Someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you're sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give him your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You have heard it said. You know, when Jesus says that, he's always talking about the popular religious teaching of the day. But in this case, he's also quoting Scripture. Exodus 21:24 says retaliation should be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Should be. must be. Leviticus 24:20 says to repay a fracture for a fracture. Whatever one person does to injure another person may only be paid back in that same way. Deuteronomy 19:21 says, show no pity for the guilty. Life for life, hand for hand, foot for foot. So what's Jesus doing here? Is he arguing with the Old Testament? Like, yeah, when God said those things, he didn't really mean it. He was just kind of having a bad day. Because that's how a lot of people kind of look at the Old Testament. They think the Old Testament and the New Testament are saying two completely different things. That's what people think. But they're not. That's not what Jesus is doing here. He's not refuting the Old Testament. He's not contradicting God's word. He's clarifying the original intention of the commandment compared to the teaching that was currently being taught, which is something that we should take notes on. Because we take a lot of Jesus' teaching, like even stuff from the New Testament, guys, and we either ignore it or we twist it to mean whatever we think it ought to say. The original intention of these laws of retaliation, they were exactly the opposite of the way they were being used. Because they had twisted it to mean something like, you got to do what you got to do. Be sure to get even. Which is just about as far from the actual intention of God's law as you can get. Because these laws were supposed to limit how far people could go when they went looking for revenge. Because revenge always tends to escalate. Like you kill John Wick's dog, and he's going to murder you and your whole family. He's going to burn down your house. He's going to put your friends in a blender. And then he'll probably feed that to his new puppy. Yeah. See, someone breaks our kid's tooth or pokes them in the eye. We want to break their head. No one just wants an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. We want revenge. And then the second thing that God's doing in the Old Testament with these laws is he's setting up a foundation for human dignity, equality. He's making it so every person was to be treated equal in value, regardless of their social, racial, or economic status. People like to take jabs at the Old Testament like it's this barbaric, irrelevant document. But that's only because they misunderstand what it's actually saying and how it's the thing that laid the foundation for all human civilization. So here Jesus is, pointing out how the teachings of that day, how they'd been misreading everything, and he explains the true intentions behind God's commandments. And then, like Jesus always does, he makes it more hardcore than they could have ever imagined. You want to be a Jesus follower? Okay. Well, Jesus calls his disciples to reckless generosity, to an almost naive selflessness. He wants his people to be ready to let people take advantage of them. How does that sound to you? Ridiculous? Outrageous? Because that's how it sounded to them. And Jesus, he might be exaggerating a little bit, like to make the point. This is the guy who said to cut off your own hand if it causes you to sin. But it doesn't mean he's not serious. Because he wants to reform our instincts. It's going to be natural for us to be quick to anger and revenge, to hold grudges. That's our home base. Like, that's our sweet spot, guys. It's not in our nature to sacrifice for others. It's the same idea that St. Paul talks about in Romans chapter 12, when he says to not repay evil for evil, but to overcome evil with good. You know, that whole leave vengeance to the Lord idea. Be ready to let people take advantage of you. And that's not going to be easy. Following Jesus is never the easy way. But it's always the right way, and it's the only way that works. Let's say somebody tries to rip you off. They insult you, or somehow you think they're trying to take advantage of you, right? This is what Jesus is saying you should do. Err on the side of not getting even, of not getting offended, not walking around looking for ways to get your feelings hurt. See, it's completely against our natural instincts to let people take what they want, to let people take advantage of us. Sounds crazy to us. But don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, because Jesus is not saying we can't defend ourselves. Or more importantly, he's not saying that we can't defend our loved ones, like when there's a real threat against them. That's a completely different issue. But an insult is not a threat. Disrespect is not a threat. At least not to anything but our pride. A slap on the cheek is not an assault, no matter what our outrage culture says. A slap on the cheek, that's an insult. It's meant to sting, but it's not meant to damage. And Jesus says that we're to take an insult and let them slap the other cheek too. To not only let them put down our sports team and mock our political affiliations, but also call our kids ugly and make your mama jokes without looking for revenge, without rising to conflict. Proverbs 26 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you're going to be just like him." We don't have to jump into every disagreement with both feet. Wisdom knows how to keep from escalating a conflict, how to keep the drama from constantly coming to a boil. This section is a very well-known section of Jesus' teaching. It's where we get the phrase, turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give the shirt off your back. We know these things. We just don't do them. And the thing is, it was a lot harder for them than it is for us. The Roman soldiers, they could grab any random Jew on the street and demand whatever possessions they had on them. Can you imagine how furious that would make you? If soldiers could just walk up to you and say, "Hey, nice phone. Give it to me. And I'll take your bike and your watch too. And your shoes. I like those shoes. Give me those shoes. And your sandwich. I'm hungry. That sandwich looks good. Give me your sandwich." They had the legal right to take whatever they wanted. And Jesus, he's basically telling his people to suck it up and give it to them. They could also grab any Jew, male or female, and they could force them to carry their stuff. But the law put a limit on it and said they could only force them to carry their stuff for 1 mile. Only 1 mile. So Jesus is saying, yeah, that's not cool that they can do that, guys. But if they do, if the evil person does that to you, don't just go 1 mile. Go an extra mile. If they demand your shirt, give them your coat too. if they slap you on the cheek and call you names, keep your mouth shut and let them slap the other cheek as well. Be prepared to let people take advantage of you. And that's not what they wanted to hear, just like it's not what we want to hear. Why would Jesus want his followers to be taken advantage of? What good could possibly come from that? We like other Bible verses a lot more than we like this one, don't we? We like that Bible verse that says to sell our coat and buy a sword. We like that one. That sounds more like the Jesus Texas Ranger that we're more interested in following. That's who they wanted to follow too. They wanted the Messiah to be a conquering war hero king who was going to teach those dirty Romans a lesson. And he did teach the Romans a lesson. It just wasn't the lesson they were hoping for. We all know what happens when we let people take advantage of us, right? You let people slap you, insult you, if you let people push you around. See, Jesus was going to show his people just exactly how far he was willing to practice what he preached. How far he was going to let people push him around. See, they were going to come for him in the middle of the night. And Peter was going to draw his sword and fight back. But Jesus was going to stop him. Don't fight back. They were going to take him, and they were going to insult him and mock him and strike him on the face with their fist. It was going to draw blood. They were going to make him carry a cross all the way to Golgotha, and then they were going to nail him to it. And he wasn't going to resist. He was just going to take it. They were going to take the shirt off his back. He was going to go the extra mile and take the sin of the world on himself as he did all this stuff. All our sorrow, all our pain and shame. But even while he was being taken advantage of, instead of crying for revenge, he was going to say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And the moment that you realize, the moment you realize that he did all that for you, that's the moment when everything in your world is going to change. That's the moment when you're saved by grace through faith. When you see that connection between what Jesus did for you and what he's calling you to do with your life. It's all going to start coming together. It'll all start to make sense. Jesus is calling you to be prepared to let people take advantage of you. To stop keeping score. To stop aggressively defending yourself when people challenge you. Or passive-aggressively defending yourself, if that's more your style. Jesus is calling you to be sacrificially generous and kind. You know, of all the teaching of Jesus, is there anything more difficult for us hot-blooded Americans to accept than these words? Because we think it's a virtue to get offended when someone disrespects us, when someone threatens our rights or tries to take our stuff. This teaching of Jesus is so countercultural. It goes against our grain. It's offensive to us. Jesus wants us to let people take advantage of us. And that's not the Bible verse we would have highlighted. It's not the Bible verse that we would print over a sunset and hang on our wall for inspiration. We don't like it. We would rather fight than let someone take advantage of us or disrespect us. This is not the Jesus that we like to talk about. It's not the Jesus that we want to listen to. We just want to put our fingers in our ears, pop some corn, and watch revenge fantasies. Right? Put on headphones and listen to breakup songs. Because we want to slap them back. If they get on a high horse, then we want to get on a higher horse. We're not going to carry their crap the extra mile. We're not going to carry it the first mile. To hell with them. We avoid eye contact with the people on the corner that we know are going to ask us for money. We let the phone go to voicemail when someone calls that we suspect is probably going to ask to borrow something. We completely end relationships with people if we feel like they're trying to take advantage of us. We'll even stop talking to our own family members if we think they've been disrespectful to us. That's the American way. Walk tall, carry a big stick. We don't get mad, we get even. But this rugged, selfish, individualistic worldview, it's not compatible with the gospel. It's not compatible with the God who gave his life for us. The God who let himself be completely taken advantage of by us. Why did he do that? He did that so he could give us what we need, so that we could be shown grace and mercy and forgiveness. Because he's not like us. He's not petty. He goes the second mile for you. And he goes the third mile, and as far as he needs to go. And when you get mad and you slap him in the face, and every time we sin, that's exactly what we're doing, he turns the other cheek. He's not offended. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. He doesn't avoid eye contact when we come to him asking for the things that we want. He says if you ask anything according to his will, he's glad to give you the desires of your heart. He's not asking us to do anything that he's not constantly doing for us, times a million. And this whole turn the other cheek, let people take advantage of you thing, it's been criticized by people for a long time. It has. But people don't think it's a bad idea because it's too low, too vile, an unworthy idea. People don't like it. They criticize it because it's too high, it's too lofty, it's too hard. Like it's impossible to live life with this high of a standard. But I think the opposite is true. I think it's impossible to live life unless this is our standard. I think it's the only way that life on planet Earth works. What's terrorism if it's not just the lowest form of revenge and retaliation? And I've heard my whole life that there's never going to be peace in the Middle East. And why is that? Because no one will ever let anything go. Everyone wants blood for blood. But there's no hope in revenge. So it's up to us. It's up to us, the people of God, to be the ones who show the world a better way. To be the light of the world, the salt of the earth. Jesus wants us to let people take advantage of us so they might get a glimpse of the hope that we have, the hope we have in Jesus, Because our hope isn't in this world. Our hope isn't in the treasure of this world. Our hope isn't in the respect that we can get from people. Our hope is not in revenge. Our hope is that by giving our life to Jesus and following him, that our life was going to have meaning and joy. And not by holding on to worldly things, but by letting go of them. See, we don't have to hold on so tightly to this life because we have the promise that because we're connected to Jesus, we're going to rise from the grave just like he did. He wants us to be willing to let people take advantage of us so that they'll believe us when we say our hope is in him and not the things of this world. And not everyone's going to listen. I mean, sometimes people are just going to get away with hurting us. They're never going to notice that we were trying to tell them about Jesus. It's going to happen. People are going to get away with hurting us and taking advantage of us. We just plant the seeds. It's not up to us to make those seeds grow. That's God's job. Our job is just to love people, to be kind to people, to forgive people, to be patient, and to be prepared to let people take advantage of us. So that when we're walking with them, when we're going that extra mile, we can confuse the hell out of them by showing them kindness and by pointing to Jesus. Amen.
For more information, go to newchurchtexas.com or email frank@frankhart.com.